today we're going to try and do this quite interactively. I've not really done much preparation because it was born out of a conversation. Anlika, you and I were having this, and so it's just a seed of a thought. But I think it's kind of the need of the hour. And though I've been thinking about it a lot, I really think that collaborative thinking around it is much needed. This is not something for one person to think through. Um, so yeah, I mean, even if you don't have your cameras on, that's fine, but please do kind of pitch in and participate. And let's see where to take this idea. I have a feeling we'll have to do like a follow-up session where I am able to sort of consolidate a lot of ideas that you've said and laid out, and then do a second round of thinking around it. Uh, but yeah, let's try to see where we go with it. Um, so welcome to the January AMA that's happening on the 1st of February. Sorry about that. I forgot why we missed January. Something happened, something valid happened, but now I don't seem to be able to keep track of anything anymore. Life is a blur. Uh, Anyway, and thank you for your patience. Thank you for understanding and still being here. And as always, for the newcomers, as always, if you say something that you think should not be on the recording, please let me know. I will gladly redact it before uploading the recordings, which reminds me I have to upload the old recordings. Um, Yes. As most of you are aware, I have been completely, wholly consumed by what's been happening in India in terms of the Supreme Court hearings and the work that we are doing around it. And something was born out of that, which is a consideration around what should activism really be like, because we're seeing a lot of activism these days. And so, what should it be? What should it not be? What's hurting us? What's going to help us? So on and so forth. So, I'd love to start out by asking each of you to think about what does activism mean to you? See, this is
Yeah,
why
I
I
think
like watching the videos of you guys, because I can tell when the thought is brewing and I'm like, it's going to come in three, two, one. There it goes. Yeah.
yeah, I think like activism basically it arises when there is something um I mean not like okay particularly just right and wrong, but like something that is um I mean an activism also could be in any form. It doesn't like broadly when you say activism you think of like um like going for a protest or like something larger, but I think it can be at a big scale and it can be at a very micro scale as well. Like maybe just changing one person's perspective, and you can, so activism can fall under a very large area. Like it depends on how, like, also depends on how you can influence at what scale. So even like maybe even changing one person also is, I feel, makes a difference. I don't know, not.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think there's a right or wrong answer here. So let's just discuss what it is that we feel is activism. In our minds, what is activism? Anyone else? So are you saying that activism rises when there is something wrong in society? Is that is that how you see it?
Yeah, it maybe like, to just be heard when you feel like there is something wrong going on, and like for example, it's not as per law, and like things are changing without any thought given to it. Or like for example, like even this Nicobar development project, it's like, it's disturbing me like crazy, but I'm like, I don't know what I can do about it. where it feels wrong, where there have been like um, so there's scientific evidence, say, for all these things, like what is going wrong, but there is no way to, how do you even like stop something like this, stop or change the course? So yeah, I think activism arises when there is a need, like when there's something going wrong, or um, or at least you have the uh, choice to question it, like yeah.
Right. Yeah. Um, Annalika's left a comment that says campaigning for social change. Um, yeah, yeah, that makes sense too. What else? Anybody else have a different view of activism, or are you all aligned with this like perfectly? I'm going to give you all a few seconds because I've come to realize that people are shy and don't like to speak quickly. Yeah, Preeti, do you have something to say? You're on mute. You're on mute. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I'd say activism is when you stand up for any cause, and whether it's in the face of injustice, inequality, or wherever there is a gap to be filled, there is something that is missing. And so we advocate for any sort of change, um, or the protection of any rights or empowerment of anyone who is facing any sort of oppression. For me, activism is a very wide and all encompassing term.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like that's an emerging theme, right? It seems like it's very wide. Do you guys feel like activism is something that comes up when there is a specific event that happens or a specific set of events that's kind of foreboding, like, the Nicobar issue or the dogs issue? Like, is it issue based, rather not issue based, but event based? Or is it something that um, can happen on an ongoing basis for, like, a generation or more? How do you see activism? Yeah, Juhi.
I think, yeah, one part of activism could also be where you're trying to maybe live according to a certain set of ethics, or I don't know, like for example, like if you see injustice towards women, like if you see someone disrespecting constantly at a daily, very small level, you're trying to like, okay, this is not okay for me. I'm not, or you tell this person that, hey, this is uh, you just address that this is why I feel this is not correct. I don't know whether that activism is a part of you, like if you're
Mm.
living in a certain, I mean, I'm not able to express what I'm saying,
Mm,
but
mm. Yeah, yeah,
um,
I see what you.
it's a very like inbuilt into your daily
Mm,
experience.
mm. So it's not as much like a thrust towards something, but it's really the way you choose to live your life and make daily choices is something that you also see as a potentially activism. Um, yeah, maybe. Um, I think feminist issues frequently fall under that category, right? Like feminist activism, I mean, it's been going on for ages. Veganism is another one. Um, what about the freedom movement in India? Do you think that was activism? Or is freedom movements and fight for freedom kind of different? Again, no right or wrong answer. You can ramble on. It's okay. You can think out loud.
I'd say it's two sides of the same coin.
Hmm.
It's a fight, but with a particular goal, maybe. But well, like you said, certain fights can go on for generations. Some can be, like you mentioned, on a very micro level, on a very localized level as well.
Hmm. Hmm.
For me, activism can be uh, pretty much anything, and it can be about enacting change on a very local level, but also on larger policy levels, for instance. So I come from a family of activists and working in NGOs, and social justice is social justice and equity is something that we spoke about at dinner tables. And so to me, activism feels like something that we do on a daily basis, but also something that is um, that needs to be that needs to be mobilized also on a larger scale
Yeah.
in a way. Sorry if there's a bit of disturbance in the background.
Yeah, we're all used to that. And the disturbance frequently is canine, which is perfectly fine. I think mine are sitting back here. Okay. Who is this? Analika says activism has to do with ideals, morals, values that people stand up for and feel strongly about, where there is frustration with the current situation. And you're right. I mean, I think the current situation is something that could have just cropped up, or the current situation is something that you've just inherited, right? And I think a lot of activism, for instance, if you're looking at social change against class hierarchies, poverty, children's rights, these are things that we have inherited. I don't know when is the last they didn't exist. And so it can be, and I think pretty the way you say it, I mean, especially if your family's been in it and that's a dinner time conversation, then it's really a way of life, right? It is just every day. And sustainability, for instance, becomes just part of everyday life, the way you cut your milk packet open and, like little things like that can be part of it. And so I think it can be very, it's a long drawn fight versus very intense fights. And one of the reasons this thought came up is recently I was on a call with a group of people who are engaging in activism for the dogs right now. And they were talking about how burnt out they are and how, when will this end? And, like, thinks about just being so frustrated and I just feel like stopping. I don't want to do this anymore. And I was thinking to myself that I do think we need some perspective shifts on activism because, um, some battles can last a lifetime, multiple lifetimes too. And so if we choose to fight a fight, do we go in there with the expectation that this fight ends on this date? This is the expiration date. We need a resolution by this time. Um, or is there value in understanding and accepting that some of these just demand a lifetime of commitment? That's what's required. And the other thing I was also thinking at that time, right, and I was mentioning this to one of the people on the call, as a generation, our generation, I think for the last few years, a few decades, and when I say few decades, I'm really talking about maybe 6, 7 decades kind of a thing, not like 1 or 2, but slightly longer, have gotten to a point where we're so comfortable with the way our life is set up and the way our life interacts with the outside world, that having to fight for a social cause almost feels like an ask that's too much. But we seem to forget that even less, a generation ago, 2 generations ago, there were people who were fighting for independence. It was a long battle with no end in sight. There were generations that fought it and never even saw the outcome of it. And then they were fighting poverty, extreme poverty. Post-independence, there was that battle. It's only now in India that, we've kind of gotten comfortable-ish to the point where we really don't have to mandatorily take on a fight. It's an option. We choose to if we want to, if our conscience kind of kicks us in that direction. But more or less, we're kind of, we don't need to. And so expecting that this is normal life, a life without a struggle is normal, and any struggle that gets tossed in, any social cause that gets tossed in is completely abnormal. I don't know if that's necessarily like a healthy way to look at it. So I saw a lot of people getting very demoralized and demotivated, saying, we're going backwards. Uh, but I don't know if history is linear that way. I don't know if we all constantly go forward in our mind, what we see as forward. I mean, some people would probably see this as forward, right? If you look at the people who specifically don't like dogs, they see this as completely forward. They don't see this as backward at all. Um, or for that matter, look at the struggle in so-called countries that are way more forward than us. It's not that they don't have battles. I mean, for instance, the US has been seen as at the forefront of being extremely liberal for a long time. And look at the battles they're fighting. I mean, they've lost abortion rights, right? Right? It's not even. And look at the battle they're fighting today. And so this struggle, and there's the other aspect to this, right? So much of the struggle frequently comes from, we struggle because we're up against power structures, right? That's frequently what it is. It's, there is no legal recourse. You can't go drive in your AC car, argue in court, may do a mic drop and walk back, and I did the perfect argument and we won this, and everything is the way it's meant to be. The system functions exactly the way it's meant to be. That's really not it. The truth is that we have all created power structures which can be abused, and whether we like it or not, the people who take that power are frequently dot 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 like, you use whatever word you want to. They're not nice people, right? Typically people who take on that mantle of power are not necessarily nice people. I shouldn't even say that, because if you look at the histories of a lot of people who had a lot of purity of intent and great so-called great moral radars to start with, power seems to have a very corrupting effect on them. And so at one point, that is, they do become something else. And that is the nature of power structures across the globe, right? And that's not going to change. And they're constantly going to be trying to see how to shift power away from a set of people to a different set of people. And that's just so natural. If it hasn't happened in your country yet, let's talk in the next 5 years. Let's see, right? Right? And if you think it hasn't happened in your country, chances are that it's because it's happening in a hidden way to a population that is out of sight, to a set of people in another country. The suffering and the pain has been outsourced, or to another species behind closed doors where you're not allowed to go, so on and so forth, right? Um, so I feel like uh, activism is not necessarily something that happens when there's an anomaly. It almost feels like it's a very natural part of human existence. It's just, there are a few of us who will always oppose to this, oppose to a certain set of things in the way power is being used. How do you feel about this?
Actually, I honestly didn't see it going in this direction. When in August, I got, pit, like this feeling in my stomach, like this is, it could go really bad, but I didn't really think that it's going in the direction it's going now. And I mean, this is just like yesterday, like when I was doing the assignment and we were, putting in references, and I'm like, I was feeling a little like disheartened, where I'm trying my best to put in the right things so that this is credible piece of work. Whereas in the court, you can like say anything, numbers are like whatever. And it feels so sad that opposing this, we need to get everything right to the dot. It has to be polite, like when you address them, everything has to be so correct from our side. But from that side, it can be whatever. It was, like that's where I'm at right now.
Yeah. And isn't that like part of the problem across the board, right? I mean, look at what's happening in the US. Same thing, right? There are amazing arguments being made by people. Like, I mean, come on, right? You shouldn't have to have data to show like we need kindness or compassion and show it with data. But yeah, that's and that is precisely the point of the other side, right? The other side, which is sitting at a seat of power that says, I get to do this. Watch me. I get to do this, and there's nothing you can do. Mm. How do you guys feel about the idea that activism is something that isn't an anomaly? It is just life. And
Yes,
Anika's bursting to say something.
I'm feeling freezing right now in Delhi, so as you can see, but so apologies for the way I look. I actually had always thought of activism, and I also think a lot of people see activism as a more an extreme form of protest, right? And I appreciate what you're saying right now, because that would redefine or reposition it a little bit or give it a little form and shape that is different from the uh, maybe the common view. What I have noticed in the work that we do here in India in the community dogs is as soon as you're put as an animal activist, even if that label is incorrect, right? People put you in boxes and like to label people. So as soon as the label of animal activist is connected with your name, you're basically seen as an extreme person who is maybe not reasonable, out of dialogue in the eyes of many others. And so I have personally, with community dog management, tried to always stay away from that type of activism and also try to correct people if they call me an animal activist. And even the term animal lover goes in that direction. This animal lover and animal hater, it doesn't sit right with me as a vocabulary. It polarizes people further. It brings us into these wars of pro and con. And that war is again, this it's activism from both sides, basically. If it becomes extreme, also activism in that definition of protest or, very firmly standing up for something you believe in. And the form and shape it gets can get ugly also. It can get very loud. Um, we mostly are associated with protests on the streets or in any sabotage, even, animal activists, animal rights activists in other countries also have had like a more of a terrorist cell to it sometimes. I mean, look at Greenpeace also. They're doing a lot of things for the rights of the animals to stand up, but they're doing things beyond the law sometimes. They're balancing on that kind of, what is allowed and not allowed. And they're risking sometimes their own lives, right? I mean, it goes quite extreme. And that is a form of animal or other activism that I think is most common in the definition of activism that people think of, not the extreme only, but towards that side, loud, etc., anti protest. And I really like the way you position it as a way of life if you believe in something, because that's what I said, if it has to do with ideals, morals, values, you just live that inherently, right? So I just wonder, um, commonly, if people can see that there is also a way of doing activism in, how do you say that, in a lifestyle format, right?
Yeah.
And what does that look like?
Yeah.
Exactly where we are talking about animal. I always try to say like show the way, lead the way by example, show the solutions that it's possible to coexist and things like that.
Yeah.
So that is also a type of activism. It's also a type of standing up for what you believe in, basically. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, this is a long
So
intervention.
there are a bunch of things that come up here, right? For me. To the point of labels, it's really interesting because what I have noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, so run these labels by your head and see if you see differences. Um, any form of, let's call it soft activism now, way of life activism, right? Any form of living by a certain set of values, which is anti-establishment, which pushes back on existing power structures, which um, uh, kind of questions the exploitative rights of the powerful, and any of these um, immediately gets assigned labels, and the image that is built out is the extreme version of that label, and that is the reason why the labels are being used. So, for example, the second I stand up for my right as a woman, I've had people tell me, oh, so you're that feminist types. There goes the label, right? Very quick to assign that label. And the reason they want to slap that label on me so badly is because we've done a very successful anti-feminism campaign, which associates feminism with a very extreme form of it, with sort of, oh, you hate men kind of a form of it. And that is the part that they want to assign to you so that you let go of this stance, right? So the other one, I had a friend, thankfully I say I had a friend because I let go of this friend for this kind of these tricks that he was playing on me. So for instance, when I chose to not eat meat, it was just a lifestyle choice, right? I don't want to eat meat. That's it. I'm not sitting there and speculating about your food. In fact, I'm willing to pay for your food. Big mistake that I should not have made. No matter what you order, but I choose to not eat meat, and I choose to not cook it in my house with no lectures, no labels. But it was very important for him to slap the label on me very quickly. Oh, you're a vegan activist. Even vegan for that matter, right? Vegan is a choice of life or it's an activist stand. It's looked as an activist stance, even if that person is not really advocating in any way, but just choosing to live it, right? Dog lover, again, when did that become so extreme that it meant that you hate people? I like dogs. You might like snakes. Doesn't make you an activist, doesn't make you hate humans. It doesn't mean anything else other than you like snakes. Birder doesn't seem to have the same problem, right? I like watching birds and nobody is going to go, oh, you're a birder, right? Like having this extreme, so you hate humans. No, I didn't say that. I just said I like watching birds. That's it, right? I just like dogs. That's it. Um, but for some reason, dog lover. Oh, I see similar things with a lot of these, and again, I think that's a tool to suppress activism, and I don't mean the louder form of activism, the showing up in the protest, the intense form of activism, but even activism as a way of life, right? So choosing to uphold female rights as a way of life, choosing to claim space for myself as a woman, as a way of life. And there is a way, this person had a way to try and suppress that by trying to slap a label on me. So I wonder if we push back on labels, or we reject labels, or we embrace them, we redefine them, or we try to find new labels constantly. I'm sure the second you find a new label, it won't last very long. So it's going to be a cat and mouse kind of a game, right? But what are your thoughts? You want labels? Don't want labels? Yeah, Lavina.
So for me, I like at beginning, like long time back, I used to think labels are not good, but after a while, I started just embracing them. Like I say that I am an animal lover, and I feel proud of that because um I am choosing that life, that kind of life. Even feminism, it's like there's a bad image, extreme image that has been created in the society by some people, and then other people starts believing that feminism is when females are taking advantage of the equality or of the power of or whatever, all those negative aspects. So what I try to do is like I still tell them I'm a feminist, but you what you think of the label is wrong. It just means that equality of rights and equal opportunities. That's it. So honestly, I think having labels is not bad, but the definitions of labels can be different for different people. And if we won't have labels, then what will we have? Like that's basically me not having a name. So labels can be good if they are used in the correct format.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, when I was growing up, the label liberal wasn't problematic. So when people called us liberal, we were like, yeah, we're a very liberal household. Suddenly, in the last decade, you're like, oh, you're a liberal. I'm like, yeah. When did that become a slur? You know, I am liberal. I'm not a liberal. I am liberal. I'm liberal in my choices. I come from a liberal household. You know, I embrace rights for all. I live by certain values. And when I was growing up, because we grew up in Bangalore city, that too, at that time, we were like, yeah, I'm not conservative. That was the way. I'm not a conservative person, and now I'm a conservative or I'm a liberal, right? And it's really interesting. It's really interesting. Okay. Anybody else have thoughts on labels? Do you want a label or do you not want a label? Do you think it's useful, harmful? Do you want to defend your label? Or is that yet another fight and you're like, thanks, but I have enough fights. I don't want this to. Yeah, Jyoti.
Yeah, like so I think I don't want labels because of, like I mean, it's not like I don't want to think these things, but um I rather not have because like Lavina was saying that, people might take the label, it's your own interpretation of the label, right? So then I want to be heard as a neutral somebody. Because sometimes when I'm like even talking to someone in my neighborhood, like about dogs or something, if I don't have that label associated with me, I feel they respond better to me. Like, when we were, for example, when we were looking for Coco, there is another girl who like she comes across more like an, I mean, a figure where she's taken because of the dog lover tag, she's taken or dismissed sometimes because oh she's just being extreme. Where sometimes it's not like she's saying the right things, but she's not taken seriously. So if and then I felt the same people were responding better to me because I just told them in a very casual and because I wanted to wanted their help. So in that sense, not having a label worked where people might just hear you out without putting their own associations on it.
Hmm. Yeah. There is always bias around these labels. But one could also when I don't know if well, none of you have been at my Lives of Streeties workshop. Well, Chandini has been, or Caro also. Uh, so when I do my workshops, I wear all my labels on my sleeve. I call it out at the beginning. I say these are my labels. Uh, so I'm telling you upfront, this is where I'm coming from. This is my reflexivity. Don't expect me to be unbiased because I can't. Don't expect me to be objective because I can't. Um, so I'm going to tell you upfront, this is where I'm coming from. And this is an honest way for me to present it, because true objectivity is a myth. That's true. Whether you wear the label or no, the truth is that you're not objective. You are, in one direction or the other. I'm not saying this should be done this way. There are other times where I will not divulge my labels, obviously. Um, uh, but I've been like making a point of so we were talking about the idea of community reaching out to community as a form of activism, right? Like getting to know the community and bridging gaps within the community. So every time I see somebody in front of my house, and my house is very attractive, so people come to go gawk at it from outside the gate, right? And so as soon as I see people, like I run out with a big smile on my face and I say, hello, welcome, would you like to come in for some tea, yada, yada, yada. And then as soon as they reflect that smile back at me, immediately I toss my label at them right away. I love dogs, here are my dogs, this is my cutie, this is Chaita, and I name them, right? I name all the dogs, I touch them and I show affection, and I demonstrate my label. I don't just say it, I demonstrate it full out up front for them, right? And I think that has worked in my favor at those times. But one of the labels that I do not divulge to them is that I'm liberal, right? I see no point in doing that. Um, uh, so I think, I mean, it's not that there is one way or the other to do this, but I think being aware of the fact that I think labels can be beneficial. So feminism is one of those things where in certain places I will bring it up, especially if somebody actually accuses me of it. Then that is the time when I turn around and I defend the label, saying that, yeah, I am a feminist. And this is what that label means to me. And I ain't backing down from that stance. Right? And that to me is kind of part of that label, right? It's part of that stance. It's part of living that value. Okay. So labels is an interesting thing. Think about it, and definitely continue to think about it and continue to like send in thoughts, because I think all of this is going to be very, very valuable for us going forward, right? Do we want to use labels? Do we want to think of alternative labels for now? Because this is like a hot scene right now, and like everything is fired up. So for the time being, do we want to look at this differently, or do we want to use it to bring together people? How what do we think is the right thing? So be mindful and think about it. This is not meant to be a lecture kind of a thing. It's really meant to get you to start thinking about some of these things, because some of you are actively doing this in a very intense way in the last few months and will continue to do so. The other question that I wanted to ask is, do you think activism can exist without intersectionality? That's a very interesting one to ask, because again, when we were talking about this, I mentioned that a few days ago we were having like a support call, and somebody pointed this out, right? What has happened today, it's not a sudden thing. What happened in August in India is not sudden, right? There has been a lead up to this. There has been a lead up to this from multiple fronts. One, there has been a collapse of the judicial system, right? So it has been collapsing and it has been decaying in front of our eyes. And this person who brought this up, she also engages in a lot of gay and lesbian activism, rights activism, and female rights activism, and she had an interesting point. She's like, people are not showing up for us because we've not showed up for anybody else, right? Without intersectionality, it's never going to work. And interestingly, so if you also look at, I've spoken about this in the past, the brown dog movement in the UK, which started out as an animal welfare based activism, because they were doing vivisection on dogs, cutting them open alive. in the name of science. And that there was pushback for that when women started getting into universities. And once they got into universities and they saw what was happening, and they were like, whoa, this cannot happen. This is ridiculous, right? This is beyond cruel. And the objection at that time, and you'll see parallels here now, is so much. The objection at that time was, see, this is why we should not let women into universities. They're just sentimental and, they don't understand science. And so what started out as wanting to protect the dogs then spilled over to women's right and gay and lesbian rights as well. And all of these different movements are kind of built on similar pushback, right? Some bodies are more important and therefore can exploit some other bodies or kill some other bodies or capture some other bodies or use some other bodies or subjugate some other bodies because they're less important. Now, this sum and this sum, you replace it in different permutation and combinations, you get all these different movements that start coming up. And so the question that comes up there is, can activism of any form ever hope to succeed without intersectionality?
I don't know if it can or it should or it shouldn't, but I don't think it can because in the end, we are grown in a way that in education we study different subjects. Like social is different, science is different, maths is different. But in the real world, everything is merged together. And that's not how life works when you take one thing separate. You can't do that. So I think even if you want to make it separate, it can't be ever.
Hmm. Hmm. Yeah, that's an interesting way of looking at it, right? Like we may choose to try and fight it separately, but they're not two different topics to separate it out. So it's like splitting a vote bank, right? They're fighting the same fight under different labels. Imagine if all of us were fighting it under a single label. That number would look very, very different. But what's the big but there? That starts pointing you towards a ideal form of activism, right? You have to live by every value that you fight for. How can you? Can you live by every value? Can you live by values of sustainability, female rights, all animal rights, rights of commons? Can you make a promise, because I'm fighting for a dog, I will never take a flight? I will never take paracetamol. Many who are fighting animal rights, dog rights, exclusively fight for dog rights and not animal rights. So it isn't even within animals, there seems to be a very clear form of speciesism. And it's really interesting for me, right? We argue against speciesism in the dog fight, right? So where do we encounter it? We encounter it when conservationists want to conserve other animals but want to give up dogs, right? And we say, oh, that's speciesism. We have that conversation while we're eating meat. Aren't both speciesism? And I say this as I'm sitting here with electricity and, this is not sustainable. If I were to have a sustainable life, and we talk about decolonizing in the language of the colonizer, it's untenable. It's, and I'm doing it on Zoom, and we're doing activism on Facebook and X. uh, so yeah, I mean, okay, someone help me out. Throw me a rope. Come on. Yeah, Preeti, thank you.
For me, intersectionality is not so much about being able to take into account every single aspect of whatever issue we are looking at, or being able to fight it on every single front that exists. Because that is humanly not possible.
Yeah.
It's just going to exhaust us. And all of the questions that you brought up, you're just going to keep going round and round in circles. But I think it's more about being aware that every fight that we fight doesn't just have that one angle or one aspect to it, and that there are multiple fights happening, and then trying to engage with whichever aspects that we can engage with. So vying for perfection is just going to be a futile exercise in any case. So rather than perfection, just doing the best with what resources, the privileges that we have, recognizing the privileges that we have in the first place. Something that, for instance, something that frustrated me with the fight for dogs right now was the response to how Delhi police responded to protesters, for instance. Like a lot of people were enraged that how can Delhi police treat us like this? But the thing is, Delhi police has always functioned like that. When people were protesting against CAA and RC, that is the kind of violence that they met. So it's not like this is something new or that something that doesn't have a historical precedence.
Yeah.
If we were slightly more open to other fights and keeping ourselves aware of fights that are going on other fronts, like the farmer fights, farmer rights fight, and protests and all of that, then maybe we would be aware of it. Gives us a better perspective on the system that we are fighting. So for me, intersectionality is not about perfection at all, but building an awareness about the system that we are fighting so that we're able to fight it better.
Yeah.
And also build allyship within other fight with other people fighting these fights on different fronts that are still interlinked to our fight.
Yeah.
I don't know if that makes
No,
more sense.
it makes great sense, right? So again, there are a few points that you brought up that make a lot of sense. One is, yes, the outrage that we're having around, how can they do this? I think that outrage would be dampened a little bit if we saw that, hello, this is the way it is done. It is being done. It was being done to somebody else. It wasn't our problem until now, so we didn't see it. Now that it's being done to us, it looks outrageous. So even what the courts did, right, in August 11th, this is what they have been doing. This is the direction the judiciary has been going in India. And if we had paid any attention to it, we would have known that this is the direction it was going. So you're right on that front. And awareness, of course, that's the other part of reflexivity, right? Like being aware of this, that while we are fighting on one front, we are also complicit on the other front. I think that humility and awareness is very significant and important. Significant in interesting ways, and I will again bring that question up. But to me, that awareness, when I'm aware that, hey, you're not sitting on some kind of unquestionable moral high ground, because I am complicit in some of these systems. I'm hugely benefiting from some of these systems. When I'm aware of that, it dampens my rage. I don't feel as much outrage towards the people who are on the other side of this fight with me. Because I know that you might be on the other side of this fight with me, but that doesn't give me some kind of a moral high ground here, right? Now, that brings me to an interesting related question also, which is there place for rage in activism? Is it necessary or is it problematic? I think there are two separate answers here. Yeah, Preeti.
I was going to say maybe a little bit of both. I know I'm definitely fueled a lot of times by rage. But of course, if I don't hold on to certain limits to that rage, then it becomes wild and doesn't help me put anything into action. Rather, it burns me out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But a certain amount of rage has definitely helped.
Anyone else? What is the role of rage in activism? Yeah, Nidhi?
For me, it has been very personal. Some days rage gets me out of bed, but other days I'm tired.
Yeah.
2 days raging against something, third day I'm in bed. I'm not getting out.
Yeah.
Uh, yeah.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So we did a conclave a while ago. I don't know if you how many of you were there or remember about anger. You remember that? And that was an interesting one, right? So my mind went straight back to that. I think rage and anger are highly activating, right? It makes you get off your rear end and go do something like, oh, I want to do something, that it kicks out complacency. It makes you want to do it. So I think there's definitely value in rage. Like Nidhi said, it gets you out of bed, it gets you going. And so every once in a while, a dose of rage may not be a bad thing. But also at the same time, I think tempering it is significant because, of course, there is a burnout issue. Uh, and that burnout is, I think, problematic because a lot of these fights are going to last a long time. There are no quick victories. And if we keep raging, we will just opt out. We won't be able to continue anymore. So if our expectation of participation is that it's a rage driven one and we're waiting for rage to kick in to activate, then I think that our activism is going to be very, very short lived. We can kiss our causes goodbye, right? Like it's done. It ain't going to happen. So I think it's important as part of activism, and I'm going to call it like mindful activism now, right? Because we're kind of consciously being aware of activism and we're trying to do this. I think one thing to check off on is to say, okay, what are the things I need to do to dampen my rage? And then on days when my battery is feeling low, maybe I need to go consume something that's going to like step this up a little bit. I don't know. I don't know what it is that you need to do, right? But whatever you need to do to kind of fire it, but make it work for you, not just roll with the punches, right? Like, yeah, like whatever comes my way, I keep taking it and then I burn out and then I collapse. Like, don't do it like that. But being mindful that, okay, there are times when I need to let that rage in and there are times when I need to find a way to completely block this because that's not useful. I think that can add sustainability to this. Like, it can really prolong. And the other thing that also this brings up for me is when we drop the rage towards the other and look at activism as a long sustained thing, I think one thing that crops up for me is activism isn't just about this movie style of, they're going to be heroes and winners and, we're going to go in there and fight it and mic drop and we're going to have this great victory and we're going to come back is a myth, right? So I think there's a lot of on-ground work that we need to do, which is slow, deliberate. Because like I pointed out, what has happened is it's not happened in a vacuum, right? It has happened because there has been a systematic issue over a long time. So for instance, if you look at the dog issue in particular, what I have noticed, and this has bothered me for almost a decade now watching, is people who defend dogs have been using the law to defend it very aggressively, without compassion towards others, without consideration towards others, and claiming the law, using the law, shooting from the shoulder, the shoulder of the law. So the second there is a bit of conflict, this is a conflict between you and your neighbor, right? This is an interpersonal issue. You've had a disagreement, you don't get along with your neighbor, and this could have been about a dog, it could have been about a fence, it could have been about a tree, it could have been about anything. But because it was about dogs and because you're aware of the law, you chose to take the legal route out instead of resolving this the way you should be resolving differences amongst neighbors. My friend had a very nice way of explaining this. So apparently he has bees outside his children's room in his apartment. And he's like, I'm the bee guy, then there's a pigeon guy, then there's a dog guy, and all of these guys defend. And so every time somebody complains about the bees, because there's no law to help him and there are no activists to help him, he takes the route that one should be taking. He's like, the second somebody puts it up on the WhatsApp group, I message them privately and I say, hey, why don't you come over for tea? He asks them to come over for tea and then he says, I take them and I show and I say, see, they're outside my kids' window. They come every year. They don't hurt my kids. They're not going to hurt you either. And have a conversation, build that personal bridge, right? Some of these things have been done that way. Instead, we issued legal notices to everybody, right? So this was coming. We did not invest enough in education. And it was interesting for me, one of the interviews, somebody asked, what about the children who are getting hurt by the dogs? And the activist's response there was so lacking in compassion towards children. I mean, children are not to be blamed, right? And her response was something like, oh, but what about the dogs? Why are you only talking about the children? Why not talk about the children? That's not nice, right? We are arguing in court that the court should have compassion towards what we love, but we chose not to have compassion towards what others love, right? And that is the way we've been doing. So this has been long time coming. And it's been long time coming in terms of lack of education, in terms of safety around animals. So there have been a bunch of issues. So to me, obviously the pendulum swings in one way and then the next. And so activism to me is part, of course, showing up in urgency, showing up where required, but also part in taking a breath and saying, okay, I need to go back and I need to do on ground work to change opinions of people around me. And I think this kind of circles back, Juhi, to one of the first things that you brought up at the beginning of the call, changing the minds of people one at a time over dinner, maybe doing school education programs, so on and so forth. Times like this are interesting times, right? So suddenly there are lots of schools interested. There are lots of, in programs, there are lots of places that have opened up that are interested in programs. In fact, even organizations like your municipalities, many of them are open to having programs. Many of them have reached out. So that's the interesting thing. I don't know if you guys are aware of it. We'll do another session. So, some of you asked what next, right? So we'll do another session on this. But many of those organizations, they've had it up to here with people fighting with each other. And everybody keeps showing up at, the police station and the commissioner's office and the BBMP office. And, all of them are like, I'm ready to tear my hair out. I don't care if you're a dog lover, hater, have dogs, don't have dogs, are a dog. It doesn't matter. You are driving me nuts, right? That's where they're at. And so an interesting fallout of that is if people go in with solutions to say, hey, can I do a workshop for XYZ people? They're like, do it. Anything that you do that is going to dampen this, the judges, they're far removed from all this. They couldn't care less, right? That's why they're not showing any change. And so as long as our eyes are trained on the judges, we don't see this, which is on ground. However, the scene is very, very different. People are approaching them left, right, and center every single day. It's driving them up the wall, and they're looking for solutions. Schools and colleges are looking for solutions. Colleges are being put under pressure from this direction to get rid of the dogs, and from that direction the dog lovers are like, you cannot get rid of them, you cannot move them anywhere, and the principals are losing their mind. So I think there are a lot of people, I'm not saying everybody, but there are many more today willing to listen. Our on ground education programs can kick off, right? And almost all of us here know more about dogs than anyone else, right? And so just walking in there saying, hey, let me do a half an hour program for XYZ, I think has takers. So to me, I think activism kind of moves with the politics of the land, with different things that suddenly give it momentum, suddenly take a step back. And when things go really downhill, I think we are focused on the downhill. We don't realize that there are also doors and windows opening all along the way. And I think smart activism, which we need right now, today's day and age, we need a lot of kind of very cool-headed activism, right? I think smart activism is in seeing that where do you fire up, where do you push through, where do you need numbers, where do you need visibility, and so on and so forth. But where do you pull back and then do like very constructive, slow on ground work. That's how I am feeling about it. That's how I am making sense of the situation. Where are you guys at?
Yes, if I may comment. So there's two layers. The education part, I really noticed that that is definitely an opening. Awareness and education, and that's also not considered to be the basically not the extreme activist. So it is there are listening ears, but I have been, as you know, working with the communities for a long time, and it is a little bit in limbo right now because there is not no clarity from the Supreme Court at the moment. So we see a lot of negative, stronger voices who feel actually empowered right now to whatever is happening. So there is not much opening at the moment, as much as there used to be in at least areas where we used to work to have dialogues with residents' welfare associations or society housing. They all are of the opinion, yeah, it's a good thing that we are developing and sanitizing the area, and therefore the dogs have to go. So it's very difficult in that community level. I believe working with the willing is the way to go. So there are
Yeah,
always a few that are open. But the general tendency is it's not very easy on grounds,
yeah,
especially with community dog care on grounds.
yeah,
Educational institutes is different. That is
yeah.
still possible.
Yeah, and Annalika, I also think that we need to redefine a little bit. Maybe one way to look at this is what worked in the past didn't. And there needs to be a different way of looking at it. There needs to be a different approach to it. Maybe, and I don't know what the new approach is. I don't know if that conversation right now is not necessarily about dogs, but for instance, fear psychosis about rats. I don't know. I'm just, thinking out loud, right? I'm not even talking about dogs here. I'm talking about, hey, let's talk about rats. Let's talk about other situations that are coming up or have come up or have come up in other places and are likely to come here. And that conversation eventually leads to dogs, right? Which is, oh, what do we do about it? Oh, yeah, we need dogs for that. But now that we're getting rid of dogs, here's a new problem. How do you guys propose we deal with it, right? You tell me, right? So and also maybe our role is not as much in the leading role of saying, I am the expert, I can talk about this, but more of, oh, I am terrified, why don't you give me a solution? Maybe that is the role right now. I don't know. What I'm trying to say is community work maybe is going to take a different form and has to be figured out. And maybe here's the other thing, right? Pre-August, India doesn't exist anymore. We have to make peace with that. We have a new India that we're dealing with. So what is our work in this new climate is something we have to carve out. Maybe old models maybe it's getting harder and harder for you because it doesn't belong anymore. Maybe it's time to look at something new. Not fun, but yeah. That I've been kind of pushing our friend Aditi to make the scary movie on rats. I don't know if you guys saw it. I'll try and share it with you. There's like a really scary movie about rats in New York. It is scary, and it's got like visuals of rats running into offices and people like jumping up and running out, rats running in subways and actually jumping on people, into their handbags on subways in New York and things like that. And they very effectively used visuals like, rats are very scary for people if you see large number of rats together in one place, right? And they've used a lot of that visual, and it's with all the music that they have used, and they talk about I don't know how true it is and to what extent it's true, but it's like a thing out of a sci-fi movie where they have apparently genetically engineered like a new predator to get rid of these rats, and that new predator has gone like out of hand and rogue and is multiplying. So I will send that movie out to you guys. But maybe that's what we need. I don't know. Okay. But my point being, I think what worked pre-August may not work. So time to cut our losses. Remember that we're looking at a new world order and work with what we have now. Okay. I won't send the movie out tonight because I don't want to give you nightmares. I'll send it tomorrow morning. All right, keep thinking about this. If you have any thoughts around it, please send it across because remember, this is the need of the hour. And it's not just to do with dogs, it's not just in India. Many people are fighting many things all over the world. So, and many of us are burning out. And eats for me at least, it eats into my heart if I cannot contribute. If I burn out and I take myself off the scene entirely, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to exist like that. And so I need to make meaning of this. And so I keep thinking, what if what if this were 1857 or 1890 and I was fighting freedom fight, I was a freedom fighter, and how would I sustain myself? How would I continue to have a meaningful life? How would I continue to find love and joy and laughter and still contribute towards something so big and meaningful? There were countless of our ancestors who did it, right? They did it. So we also have to figure out how to do it. So can we do it more mindfully? Can we benefit from spaces like this where we can discuss and use strategies and say, okay, how do we do this where we continue to have light and laughter while, yeah, Anilika, do you still have a question? Yeah.
Not
Yeah.
for this, not for today, but maybe we can talk about how to build these allies intersectionally.
Yeah. Let's talk about that. If anybody has ideas on how to build allies with intersectionality, what windows are opening that we can utilize right now, what community conversations are working as of today that we can utilize. So there are lots of open questions that we uncovered today, right? So any thoughts around this, please try it out. It's a time for experimentation. It's a time for, trying these things out. So please try them out, share with people. And if we have enough of a bulk of ideas, we will do another session. Yeah? Okay. All right. Okay, people, thank you so much for attending. And we will
Thank you,
catch up
Sindhu.
soon.
Bye.
Bye.